The following photograph was recorded in the winter of 1874, inside the Western Catacomb passage beneath Highgate Cemetery, London. The exposure was commissioned by the Metropolitan Burial Commission as part of a routine structural survey. It is the only plate from that session that was never filed. The reason is visible the moment you examine the stone floor. There, in the center of the frame, on masonry that had been sealed from rainfall for over 30 years, sits a single wet footprint on dry stone. No condensation trail leading to it. No condensation trail leading away. Just one impression, glistening against bone-dry limestone, as though someone stood there for a single moment and then ceased to exist. Let us begin with what the image actually shows. The photograph is a silver gelatin print, roughly 8 inches by 10. The tonal range is narrow. Deep charcoal shadows dominate the left third, where the catacomb wall recedes into an unlit alcove. The right side is marginally brighter, illuminated by what the survey log describes as a single magnesium flare held at shoulder height by the photographer's assistant. The ceiling is low, vaulted, lined with recessed burial slots, most of them sealed with Portland cement panels bearing names and dates from the 1830s and 40s. The floor is flagstone, large, irregular slabs of Kentish limestone, fitted without mortar. Their surface appears uniformly pale and dusty, the kind of dry mineral patina that accumulates over decades in a space with no water ingress. And there, slightly left of center, breaking the uniformity of that pale dust, is a dark, clearly defined mark. It is the shape of a bare human foot. The toes are distinct. The arch is visible. The heel impression is slightly deeper in tone, suggesting more moisture or more pressure, or both. It is a wet footprint on dry stone. One footprint, not a pair, not a trail. One. The survey team that morning consisted of 3 men: Edward Hardcastle, civil engineer; James Lewin, photographer; and Thomas Garfield, Lewin's assistant and flare operator. All 3 wore heavy-soled boots, standard Board of Works issue. The footprint in this photograph is bare. It is also, according to the scale rod visible at the edge of the frame, approximately 7 inches in length. That is notably small. Smaller than any of the 3 men's recorded boot sizes, which survive in the Commission's equipment ledger. Now look at the image again. Look at the dust surrounding that single dark impression. It is undisturbed. There are no scuff marks, no drag lines, no partial prints, suggesting someone approached the spot and stepped onto it. The footprint exists in isolation, as though it were placed there from above, or as though it had always been there, waiting for the magnesium flare to reveal it. 3 weeks after the photograph was taken, Edward Hardcastle submitted an affidavit to the Commission's Internal Review Board. The document, now held in the London Metropolitan Archives under reference MBC/74/31, states the following. Quote, "Upon developing the plate, Mr. Lewin drew my attention to the anomalous mark on the catacomb floor. I returned to the passage the following morning with a lantern. The stone was dry. There was no footprint. I examined the adjacent drainage channels and found them sealed and calcium choked. No water had entered that passage in living memory. I have no explanation for what appears on the plate." End quote. Hardcastle's affidavit is notable for what it does not say. He does not suggest a hoax. He does not accuse Lewin of tampering. He does not speculate. He simply states that the mark was present in the photograph and absent from the stone. Return your attention to the image, to that solitary wet impression surrounded by decades of undisturbed dust. Notice that the moisture has not spread. A footprint left by a living person stepping onto dry stone with a wet foot would show capillary bleeding at the edges, the water wicking outward into the porous limestone. This print has sharp borders. The moisture, whatever it is, stayed exactly within the boundary of the foot shape, as though the liquid and the stone had some agreement about where one ended and the other began. In 1875, the Photographic Society of Great Britain examined the original glass negative at the request of the Commission. Their report, published in the Society's Quarterly Proceedings, Volume 19, confirms two things. First, the negative shows no signs of retouching, double exposure, or chemical manipulation. The emulsion layer is continuous and unbroken across the area of the footprint. Second, and this is the detail that elevates the case from curiosity to something harder to dismiss, the tonal density of the footprint area is consistent with reflected light from a wet surface. Not painted-on pigment, not a shadow, not a flaw in the collodion. The silver grain pattern matches what you would expect if the magnesium flare had illuminated actual moisture on actual stone at the moment of exposure. The Photographic Society offered no hypothesis. Their report ends with a single sentence. Quote, "The mark is present on the negative and is consistent with a physical feature of the scene as photographed." End quote. Look at the image one final time. The low vaulted ceiling, the sealed burial slots with their faded Portland cement panels, the pale, dusty flagstones stretching into shadow, and that single bare footprint, wet and sharply defined, belonging to no one who was recorded as present. Too small for any member of the survey team. Gone by the next morning, chemically consistent with real moisture on real stone, yet surrounded by dust that no living foot disturbed. There is one additional detail from Hardcastle's affidavit that is easy to overlook. In the final paragraph, almost as an afterthought, he notes the location of the footprint relative to the burial slots in the wall. It was directly below compartment number 17. The cement panel for compartment 17 bears the name of a child. A girl interred in 1839 at the age of 6. The Commission never opened compartment 17. The affidavit was filed. The photograph was removed from the survey set, and the Western Catacomb passage was resealed in 1876 and not entered again for over a century. The wet footprint on dry stone. One impression, no approach, no departure, no explanation that has survived the 150 years since the magnesium flare illuminated it. If you have a theory that accounts for every detail, the moisture, the sharpness, the size, the undisturbed dust, the location beneath compartment 17, the comments are open. Case file, Highgate Catacomb, 1874. Status: unresolved.